Many years ago, in the quiet village of Umocha, there was a tradition that nobody questioned, not because it made sense, but because it had existed longer than most of the elders' teeth. Umocha was not a poor village. It had fat goats, proud yams, shiny zinc roofs, and men who cleared their throats before speaking, as if each word cost money. They took heavy titles, and their pride was heavier. However, beneath all the respect and loud cultural chants, Umocha had something that visitors struggled to swallow. In Umocha, married men were legally allowed to have a girlfriend called Agiri. Not secretly, not shamefully, not in hiding, openly. The Agiri could visit the matrimonial home in broad daylight. She could sit in the sitting room. She could enter the kitchen. She could eat food cooked by the wife. Sometimes she could even spend the night if she needed comfort. Unfortunately, if the wife complained, she would hear the same sentence repeated in different voices. It is our tradition, oh. Some women cried in their rooms. Some pretended not to care, while some even greeted the Agiri like a visiting cousins. The strongest ones learned to smile with their teeth, while their hearts boiled like overcooked beans. The elders had many explanations ready for anyone who tried to think too much about it. A man without Agiri may become spiritually weak. A man needs balance. Blocking Agiri is like blocking destiny. Some went further and whispered dark warnings. There was one man who stopped keeping Agiri. He fell sick mysteriously. Nobody knew whether that story was true, but in Umocha, truth was not necessary. Fear was enough. Children grew up seeing Agiri as normal, such that little boys would even joke, "When I marry, my Agiri will be finer than yours." Little girls would giggle, then go home and ask their mothers, "Mama, did Papa's Agiri also eat your soup?" Their mother would sigh and reply, "That is life, my daughter." Then came the time of Onyoma. Onyoma was a tall, well-spoken and generous young man. He contributed to community projects and carried himself like a man who respected women. He was in love with a lady named Abala, and during their courtship, he listened when she spoke. He asked about her dreams. He once even said, "In my house, you will be my queen." Abala believed him. She was not from Umocha. She came from a neighboring village where men behaved like normal human beings. They cheated sometimes, yes, but they at least felt shame about it. There was no official cultural approval for disrespect. To make matters worse, during their courtship, nobody mentioned Agiri to Abala. Not Onyoma, not his mother, not even the village. You know, if something is normal to you, you forget it might be strange to others. After their beautiful wedding, Abala entered her husband's house in Umocha, smiling, hopeful, and excited to begin life. For the first few weeks, everything felt like a dream. Onyoma treated her gently. He praised her cooking and held her hand in public. The neighbors nodded approvingly. "She's lucky. She married well." Then one afternoon, exactly 1 month after the wedding, Abala was in the kitchen stirring soup when she heard laughter from the compound. It was not the laughter of strangers. Nah, this laughter was that of someone familiar with the compound. She wiped her hands on her wrapper and stepped outside, only to see a young woman standing near the doorway, relaxed and confident, adjusting her hair as if she owned the place. "Good afternoon, my wife," the woman said brightly. Abala blinked. "My wife?" The woman laughed softly. "Yes, now, I am the Agiri, your husband's concubine." The spoon almost fell from Agbala's hand. Before she could respond, Onyoma walked in behind the visitor. Ah, he said casually, you have met. Abala looked at him, waiting for the joke, but there was no joke. His mother appeared from the next compound, as if she had been waiting for the moment. My daughter, don't look confused though. This is normal. Every man in Umocha has an Agiri. Abala felt the ground tilt slightly. Inside my matrimonial house? She asked slowly. Yes, the mother replied. Where else? Do you want him to be roaming outside? The Agiri sat down comfortably on the wooden bench and said, I like the smell of your soup, but add more pepper. Onyoma likes pepper. Abala turned to her husband. You did not tell me. Onyoma cleared his throat. It is not something we announce. It is the culture. Culture? Abala repeated. Yes, Onyoma said. Don't argue. It has always been so. The sentence felt like a heavy pot. Abala's chest tightened. She searched for anger, but what she felt first was disbelief. You mean she will come here? She asked carefully. Onyoma nodded. Yes. She will eat here? Yes, Onyoma nodded again. She will, Agbala's voice weakened slightly. She will sleep here? Onyoma hesitated for half a second, but that half second told her everything. He answered, if necessary, yes. His mother stepped closer and said, my daughter, don't start your marriage with stubbornness. Some wives who blocked Agiri brought bad luck to their homes. Bad luck? Abala asked faintly. Yes, there was a man who stopped his Agiri. He felt ill within months. The Agiri nodded solemnly as if she had attended the man's funeral personally. Abala stood still. The kitchen fire continued to burn behind her. The soup continued to boil, while the entire village tradition stood in front of her wearing lipstick. She could have decided to shout or cry. She could have even thrown the pot of soup away. Instead, she said, the soup is almost ready. Then she returned to the kitchen. Inside, her hands trembled slightly. She took a deep breath, another one, and without thinking, she added pepper exactly the way the Agiri had suggested. When she carried the tray out, she served them both. The Agiri smiled. Hey, yeah, you're a good wife. Onyoma looked relieved. His mother beamed proudly and said, Onyoma chose well. That evening, as the sun dipped and the Agiri laughed loudly at something Onyoma said, Abala sat quietly in the corner. She did not cry in front of them. Neither did she ask more questions. She just watched and listened. The village praised her by nightfall. Chai, she understands tradition. She will not bring shame to their household. She is mature. If only they knew. That night, when the Agiri finally left, Onyoma entered the bedroom looking satisfied and relaxed, like a man who had completed a community project. Abala was folding clothes neatly on the bed. You are quiet, he casually said. Abala looked up at him and replied, I am thinking. Thinking about what? He asked. About this culture. Onyoma sighed lightly as if she had mentioned traffic. Don't stress yourself. It is normal here. Normal, Abala repeated. Onyoma sat on the bed and explained. My father had his Agiri. My uncles had their Agiri. It does not reduce the wife. It only strengthens the man. Abala nodded slowly. And if the wife does not like it, Onyoma frowned slightly. Why would she not like it? It is not a competition. The wife is the crown. The Agiri is just balance. Balance! Abala almost smiled. Does Balance cook? She asked. Onyoma laughed, not realizing she was serious. Don't overthink it now. He stretched and lay down as if the conversation had ended. But Agbala's mind did not sleep that night. She stared at the ceiling and replayed the afternoon in her head. The way the Agiri had entered without knocking. The way the mother-in-law had defended it confidently. The way Onyoma had spoken as if she was the one who needed adjustments. She turned slightly on the bed and asked, does she come often? Yes, Onyoma replied sleepily. Not every day. How long has this been happening? Agbala asked. Before you came, Onyoma replied. The words landed like stones. Before you came, meaning that she had married into a system that already had a permanent guest. She swallowed quietly and asked, did you plan to ever tell me? Onyoma did not respond immediately, and when he did, his voice was low. It did not seem necessary to talk about it. Agbala closed her eyes. Necessary? Okay. The next morning, she woke up before sunrise, swept the compound, fetched water, and prepared breakfast. She moved like a good wife in a cultural documentary. Neighbors peeped in. One woman whispered to another, let us see how long this calmness would last. By mid-morning, the Agiri returned and walked straight into the compound, holding a small handbag. My wife, she called cheerfully. Agbala turned from the mortar where she was pounding pepper. Yes, I forgot my scarf yesterday, the Agiri said. Agbala paused. You left something here? Yes, so I kept it in the sitting room. Agbala wiped her hands and walked inside. The Agiri followed comfortably. She bent to pick up the scarf from the arm of a chair. As she straightened, she smiled at Agbala and said, you cook well. Onyoma talks about your soup. Agbala looked at her properly for the first time. The lady was not wicked looking. She was just confident, too confident. Do you feel comfortable? Agbala asked calmly. Of course, the Agiri replied. Why should I not? This is also my place. Agbala held her gaze for a few seconds. Then she smiled. You are welcome. The Agiri seemed pleased. Outside, two elderly women passed by the gates. She greeted her nicely. One of them whispered, yes, the other woman replied. She will survive. That afternoon, the Agiri stayed longer than necessary. She and Onyoma sat outside discussing village politics. They laughed loudly and spoke about people Agbala did not even know. Abala served them palm wine, and she watched the way Onyoma's face softened when the Agiri touched his arm lightly. She noticed how easily the Agiri moved around the compound as if she had once supervised its construction, and sadly, she felt displaced. At one point, the Agiri stood up and walked towards the bedroom. Agbala's heart skipped. Where are you going? She asked. To rest small, the Agiri replied casually. Agbala's hand tightened around the tray she was holding. Onyoma stood up quickly and said, not now. The Agiri laughed. I was just joking. But Agbala saw something in her eyes, something that meant a boundary had already been crossed long ago. That evening, after the Agiri left, Agbala's mother-in-law came to sit beside her. You are handling it well, she said proudly. Agbala looked at her respectfully. Mama, is this truly necessary? The older woman's face hardened slightly. Necessary? It is our way, oh. But what if a woman does not want it? Abala asked. Her mother-in-law leaned forward and said, listen carefully. A wife who blocks Agiri blocks her husband's strength. Don't let outsiders' ideas spoil your home. Abala nodded slowly. She did not argue, but she asked one more question. Has any woman ever refused? The older woman hesitated and then said, there was one many years ago. And Abala asked. She did not last, her mother-in-law answered. The answer was vague, too vague. Abala felt a chill. That night, she lay beside Onyoma again. When he reached for her, she did not pull away. She allowed him. But something inside her had shifted from trust to analysis. In Umocha, the tradition had survived because women reacted emotionally. Agbala would not do that. She would observe and measure. She would understand the structure before touching it. 2 days later, as she was washing clothes in the backyard, she overheard two young men talking near the fence. Onyoma is lucky, one of them said. His wife did not shout. Yes, the other replied. Some women fight. That is when sickness comes. Abala froze. Sickness? She continued washing slowly, but her ears sharpened. My uncle said if a wife carries anger inside, the land punishes her first. They laughed lightly and walked away. Abala remained still for a long moment. Punishes her first? So, the fear was not only for men, it was for women too. The tradition protected itself through threats. She lifted the wet clothes and squeezed it tightly. Water dripped back into the basin, but her face remained calm. That night, she did not mention what she heard. She cooked as usual and asked Onyoma how his trading went. She even massaged his shoulders when he complained of tiredness. If Umocha was watching her, they would see a wife adjusting beautifully, but inside her, something had begun to rearrange itself. For 2 weeks, the Agiri continued to come often, sometimes in the afternoon, sometimes in the evening. She no longer greeted shyly. She now moved with ownership. Add more salt, she would say from the doorway of the kitchen. Onyoma likes it that way. And Abala would nod. Yes, she did not argue or challenge her. As a result, the village grew more relaxed around her. It is over. She has accepted it, people said. She is wise indeed. One evening, while serving dinner, Abala noticed something. The Agiri and Onyoma were laughing loudly about a story she did not understand. She watched the way Onyoma leaned closer comfortably towards her bosom. Later, she asked him, "How long has she been your Agiri?" Onyoma looked up and replied, "Since before our wedding." "How long before?" Abala asked. "A year." Abala nodded. So you were courting me while she was already here?" Onyoma shifted slightly. "It is not the same thing." "How so?" Abala asked. "You are my wife," Onyoma answered. "And she?" He hesitated. "She is balance." That word hung in the air again like a stubborn mosquito. Abala did not continue the conversation. And then the next morning, something happened. Abala woke up and complained about having a pounding headache. She took painkiller and dismissed it. However, by afternoon, her ears began to feel blocked, as if cotton wool had been pushed inside. Still, she ignored it until evening when something frightening happened. Onyoma called her name from outside. "Abala!" She saw his mouth move, but she heard nothing. She frowned. Onyoma walked closer. "Abala, are you deaf?" She tried to respond. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. Panic spread across her face. She touched her throat, but nothing came. She tried again. Air moved, but nothing came out. Her world became silent within seconds. Onyoma's expression shifted from confusion to fear. "Abala!" She stared at him helplessly. His voice looked loud, but she heard nothing. Within minutes, the compound became filled. Her mother-in-law arrived first. "What is happening?" "She cannot hear," Onyoma shouted. Abala watched their mouths move rapidly. She saw their panic. A neighbor waved a hand in front of her face. She reacted because she could see clearly, but the word had gone mute. She tried to scream, but no sound came out. Complete silence wrapped around her like a thick cloth. Someone whispered something urgently, but she could still not hear it. And so the herbalist was called. He checked her pulse, shook his head, and declared loudly. She swallowed her anger. Abala read his lips faintly. "Anger?" Her mother-in-law gasped dramatically. "I told her not to carry it inside." The Agiri stood by the doorway looking half concerned and half unsettled. Onyoma looked shaken. "This cannot be from the tradition," he muttered. The herbalist raised his voice again and said, "When a woman suppresses what the land demands, the land silences her." Abala felt cold. Tears rolled down her cheeks silently. gently. The next few days were heavy. Visitors came and spoke loudly, as if volume could cure her. She must accept fully. She must release bitterness from her. She must confess. Confess what? She had not even argued with them. She had only cooked, served, and smiled. Yet her body had betrayed her, or perhaps her body had spoken what her mouth refused to speak. Onyoma barely slept. He tried everything: church prayers, traditional cleansing, and bitter herbs, but nothing happened. Abala now moved around the house quietly like a shadow. She watched everything but heard nothing. Surprisingly, the Agiri stopped coming. Fear had entered her too. Later, on the 5th day, just as all hope was about getting lost, a familiar face entered the compound: Abala's sister. But she did not come alone. Beside her stood a man Abala recognized from childhood. He was calm and composed. Onyoma asked, "Why are you here?" Her sister did not even waste time. "Because my sister is sick." Onyoma sighed. "We are handling it." "No," her sister replied sharply, "you are not." She walked straight to Abala and held her face gently. "Can you hear me?" Abala read her lips and shook her head slowly. The sister exhaled deeply. "I warned you," even though Abala could not hear her. Then she turned to the small crowd who had gathered for gossip. "In our village," she announced clearly, "a woman must balance her home." The compound froze. "Balance?" Agbala's mother-in-law repeated. "Yes," her sister continued. "Our women have spiritual needs." People started murmuring. "What is she saying?" Agbala's sister stepped aside and gestured to the man beside her. "This is her Agiri." The word landed like thunder. Silence swallowed the compound. Onyoma blinked twice. "Her what?" "Her Agiri," her sister repeated calmly. "In our land, women keep balance." Agbala's mother-in-law gasped loudly. "This is madness." But her sister folded her arms and explained, "I understand. One village's food may be another village's poison. We should have told you before the wedding." The man stepped forward boldly and said, "I mean no disrespect, but tradition is tradition." Onyoma's face darkened. "This is my house, and this is my sister. Her health is important," Agbala's sister replied sharply. The compound fell into thick silence. Even the goats near the fence stopped chewing, as if they also wanted to hear the outcome. Onyoma laughed once, but there was no humor inside it. "Don't bring foolishness here. There is nothing like male Agiri." Agbala's sister tilted her head slowly and said, "There is nothing like female Agiri in our village either. Yet, here we are." A few men shifted uncomfortably. Agbala's mother-in-law held her wrapper tightly and declared, "This is an insult. You want to disgrace my son." Agbala's sister did not blink. Was my sister not disgraced when another woman walked into her marriage 1 month after the wedding? The words cut clean. Onyoma opened his mouth, then closed it. The male Agiri spoke up again. "In our village, balance is mutual. A woman keeps a man concubine for alignment. It is not competition. It is just our culture." Onyoma stepped forward aggressively and blocked the way. "You would not enter this house." The man did not move back. He just smiled and said, "I have not even entered yet." The tension tightened around everyone present like a rope pulled too hard. Abala stood in the middle of it all, still unable to speak, unable to hear, yet understanding every moment. She watched her husband's anger. She watched fear dance around his face. Fear. The same fear women had been fed for years. What if the land punishes you? What if your husband dies? What if you block destiny? Now, the question had flipped. What if your wife has balance too? Her sister walked closer to Onyoma and said, "You say it is your house, fine, but you married my sister knowing she comes from our land. You did not tell her about your Agiri. She too did not tell you about her own village. Now she is sick and our elders believe imbalance causes this." Abala's mother-in-law scoffed loudly. Her sickness is because she swallowed jealousy. Abala's sister snapped back quickly. "Then let her go close to her Agiri first. Let's confirm something." Murmurs rose louder now. More neighbors had gathered. Some stood on tiptoe to see better. Onyoma looked around, suddenly aware that the entire village was watching him. "This nonsense will not happen here," he insisted. The male Agiri spoke again, still calm. "You are not being attacked, dear husband. I will not disrespect you. I will only sit, just as your Agiri sits." The comparison hung heavily in the air. Agbala's sister moved closer to her. She held her shoulders gently and said, "Watch this." Then she turned to the man. "Come and greet her." The male Agiri stepped forward slowly. He stretched his arms and embraced Agbala like his partner. The moment his chest touched hers, something happened. Agbala blinked. A sound entered her ears. It was faint at first, then it became clearer. She heard her mother-in-law's sharp breathing and the wind brushing against the zinc. She opened her mouth and a sound escaped. Gaps exploded across the compound. She spoke. She can hear. Onyoma staggered back. "Abala." She turned towards him and said, "Yes." The word came out weak but clear. Total silence followed. Even the palm trees seemed to pause. Her mother-in-law touched her head in disbelief. Agbala's sister folded her arms triumphantly. "You see?" Onyoma stared at his wife as if he was seeing her for the first time. "You can hear me?" She nodded. "Yes." "You can talk?" She nodded again. "Yes." Her mother-in-law's eyes darted between the male Agiri and her son. "This is manipulation," she muttered. Agbala's sister shook her head. "No, it is symmetry." The male Agiri cleared his throat. "Since she has been restored, I will move in." The sentence dropped like a bomb. He took one step toward the bedroom, but Onyoma reacted instantly. He rushed forward and blocked the doorway. "You will not cross this line." The man stopped and asked, "Why? Is it not allowed for Agiri to enter?" "This is my wife," Onyoma snapped. "And yet you made another woman's daughter Agiri," Agbala's sister fired back. The crowd shifted again. Some men began to look uneasy. At that time, the practice did not look bold anymore. It looked dangerous. Onyoma's jaw tightened. "This is different." "How?" Agbala's sister demanded. He hesitated because he did not have an answer that did not expose the hypocrisy. Agbala's mother-in-law raised her voice desperately. "A woman's body is not for sharing." Agbala's sister laughed. "And a woman's heart is for what?" The argument stretched into the evening when elders were summoned. They arrived slowly, carrying authority like walking sticks. They listened, frowned, and asked questions. "Is this practice truly from your land?" One elder asked Agbala's sister. "Yes," she replied confidently. "Have women always kept Agiri?" "Yes," she nodded again. Some villagers exchanged doubtful glances, but nobody could immediately prove her wrong. After all, they themselves had been defending female Agiri with one simple weapon: tradition. One elder turned to Onyoma. "Did you inform your wife about your Agiri before marriage?" Onyoma looked down briefly. "No." "Did you give her a chance?" "No." The elder nodded slowly. "And now you refuse her equal choice?" Onyoma's chest rose and fell heavily. "This is not equal. It is an insult." The elder leaned back. Or is it reflection? Tradition jams tradition. That statement hung sharply. Even though the argument did not end that night, the male Agiri remained seated in the compound like a calm storm, and Onyoma could not rest that night. He paced inside the house. Every time he glanced outside and saw another man sitting comfortably within his walls, his stomach twisted. He remembered the first day his Agiri had sat down there, how relaxed he had felt, how natural it had seemed, but now it felt like poison. Abala watched him silently. He turned towards her at midnight and asked, "Is this what you felt?" She did not answer immediately. He asked again, "When she came into this house, is this how your chest felt?" Abala looked at him and nodded. Yes. Outside, the male Agiri cleared his throat casually, and as the sound echoed through the compound, Onyoma's jaw clenched again. He did not sleep that night. Each time he closed his eyes, he imagined the man outside standing up, stretching and walking toward the bedroom, the same way his own Agiri had once walked freely through that doorway, the same doorway he had never considered sacred until now. At dawn, he stepped outside. The male Agiri was seated calmly under the mango tree, drinking water like a guest with no worries in this world. "You are still here?" Onyoma said stiffly. The man looked up politely. "Where else should I be? This is not your home," Onyoma said. The man nodded slowly. It was not hers either. That sentence landed rudely. Onyoma had no quick answer. By mid-morning, the compound was full again. Umocha does not miss drama. Women carried tools this time around. Men stood with their arms folded, while young boys climbed the fence for a better view. The elders arrived once more, this time prepared for a conclusion. Abala stood beside her sister. The herbalist avoided eye contact while her mother-in-law looked tired. An elder cleared his throat loudly. "We cannot continue like this. Umocha must decide." Another elder spoke slowly. "For generations, men have kept Agiri. We always justified it as balance." He turned to Onyoma. "Your wife's health is tied to her Agiri." The crowd murmured. Onyoma inhaled deeply and said, "My wife is not an object." A woman in the crowd coughed loudly and asked, "And whose object is the Agiri?" The elder nodded slowly. "This matter is no longer about one house. It is about fairness." Abala's mother-in-law raised her voice. "If we allow women to bring Agiri, homes will scatter." Abala's sister responded sharply. "If you do not allow women fairness, voices will scatter." A younger man from the crowd spoke up carefully. "If both sides can have Agiri, then why do we need it at all?" The question floated slowly. The male Agiri stood up gently and spoke. "I came here to restore balance. I have no interest in taking another man's wife. But what is good for the goose is good for the gander." He faced the elders. "You call it culture, but culture must not suffocate one half of the people." Onyoma looked at Abala. She did not look angry or triumphant. He remembered the first day the Agiri had entered their home. He remembered how he had dismissed her questions. He remembered saying it was not necessary to inform her. Necessary. That word returned to mock him. He stepped forward and said, "My wife was silenced, whether by anger or shock, I don't know, but she lost her voice inside my house." The crowd shifted. He continued, "I thought it was normal. I thought it was harmless. I thought it was my right. It did not feel harmless when another woman sat inside my room." Some men laughed awkwardly until Onyoma dropped the bomb. "I will not keep Agiri again." Everyone froze. His mother turned sharply. "What are you saying?" Onyoma repeated, "I will not keep Agiri. Not today, not tomorrow." He looked at the elders. "And I advise other men to think carefully." An older titled man scoffed. Please, oh, no one is forcing you. Leave us alone." "I know," Onyoma replied. "But if If women also begin to keep Agiri, will you accept it? The elder hesitated. That is different. How? Onyoma asked. Nobody answered. The male Agiri folded his arms behind his back and dropped. If balance is dangerous when equal, then the original practice was already flawed. The words struck deeper than shouting would have. A long silence followed. Finally, the oldest elder spoke. Perhaps Agiri was created in a different time, when women had no voice and when men made rules alone. Alas, times change. Abala's mother-in-law protested. But it is our identity. The elder shook his head gently. Injustice is not an identity. The crowd began murmuring differently now. They were now thoughtful. A middle-aged woman raised her voice from the back and asked, if Agiri ends, will men die? Some people laughed nervously. She continued, no, they will not die. Then let it end. Another woman added loudly, we have cooked enough for strangers. We are tired. Other women nodded in agreement. Onyoma stepped towards the male Agiri. You can go. I hereby denounce my Agiri. The man nodded once. He turned to Abala and bowed slightly. She nodded too. Agbala's sister smiled knowingly to Abala and left with the young man. Over the following weeks, men began adjusting quietly. Some told their Agiri not to visit again. Some reduced contact slowly, while some pretended nothing had changed but stopped publicly defending it. The elders made a formal announcement during a village meeting. Agiri practice is no longer compulsory. It is hereby discouraged. Gradually, within months, it faded. And in Umocha, young girls began to grow up without hearing the sentence, you must cook for your husband's Agiri, and little boys stopped joking about future girlfriends inside marriage. Thank you for watching the story. Kindly share your thoughts about the story with me in the comment section. Kindly share the story out with your loved ones and give the story a thumbs up. Subscribe to this channel if you've not done so by now. Until I bring another story your way. Bye!